All right, we are back with a new video, and today I wanted to talk about a different show for a change, and that is The Ghost and Molly McGee, which recently wrapped up its first season. It's a new show on Disney, and it's obviously a show that I've been pretty interested in, and one that I've been following somewhat closely over the course of the first season, but now I just have an opportunity to share my general thoughts on it. And it was a pretty good first season of the show, all things considered, and I just wanted to use this video to give my general thoughts on the show, some of the characters, some of the ideas that's going for, and some stuff that could possibly come up in season two and beyond. So, again, this is just going to be a bit more of a laid back general video than what you normally see on this channel. But let's get right into the video. So, as I said, the show just wrapped up its first season. It aired 40 episodes over the course of it. I mean, they're pretty much all like regular 11-minute episodes. So technically it's 20 episodes with two segments within each, but again, I like to think of it as just 40 episodes. And for the most part, it was actually pretty good. And I feel like there were very relatively few duds over the course of the first season, which was pretty good, all things considered, and especially considering the tone that the show is going for, which is a bit more lighthearted than a lot of other shows in its, I guess, archetype per se. I mean, we definitely seen a lot of shows like since 2010, give or take, that definitely try to go for a more serious approach. And like you'd think that with a premise like this, that it definitely would try to go down that route. But so far, at least, it's definitely distinguished itself by taking a more lighthearted approach, which is definitely a bit welcome at the end of the day. I mean, as much as I love shows like Owl House, Steven Universe, and the like, it definitely feels a little bit different than those type of shows in that they don't quite lean quite as heavily into the foreshadowing and big character development that we have seen up to this point. However, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And even then, I mean, we have plenty of people talking about the merits of the show as being a bit more lighthearted, which it certainly is, and that reputation is definitely warranted. However, it's not as if the show is just like a reincarnation of like Ren and Stimpy, or is like more in line with the Loud House per se. I definitely feel like the show definitely has more of a heart than a lot of those shows I just mentioned. And I feel like even within its more comedic approach, it's definitely one with a lot of heart to it, which does lead me into a bit of the premise here where obviously we have Molly and her family moving into this town in the Midwest, and Scratch being this ghost who's sort of in charge of the house and the town in which they move in, making sure that the misery levels are high. Obviously, they end up moving in, and Scratch, not wanting to spend time with her, like casts a curse on her, saying that he'll always be with her until like she ends up leaving the house, and this ends up backfiring when Molly does want to spend time with him and wants to be his friend, and sees the curse more as a good thing than a bad thing. And then over the course of the season, we get Scratch really building a closer relationship with a lot of the family members, eventually coming to feel like a part of the family, which is definitely a pretty nice touch at the end of the day. And of course, a lot of the episodes do focus on Molly's sort of misadventures as well, which does tie into the other idea of the premise. And it's sort of a deconstruction of this Pollyanna trope that we definitely see in a lot of these more serious shows as well. I mean, you look at Steven Universe and Owl House, which have these somewhat Pollyannish characters on them, and their good nature really elevating the characters like to rise above themselves or even to resolve the conflict in the case of Steven Universe. But here we have Molly, who is a pretty optimistic person and someone who repeatedly states that her goal is to inhabify the world. Yes, she literally makes up a word for that. But a lot of the episodes definitely really lean into Molly attempting to make things better, doing things with good intentions, but then it all just blows up in her face for whatever reason. I mean, and that is sort of an interesting premise as well, but it doesn't feel overly mean spirited per se. It definitely tries to take it from a more realistic standpoint. And we really do get a lot of Molly's perspective in a lot of things and how she's constantly trying to see the best in a lot of these situations and is trying to make things better, only for a lot of her plans to not work out as intended because she didn't quite think through all the consequences. So I think that's another interesting element of the show. And really, a lot of the characters are pretty likable here. As I said, Molly and Scratch are pretty good leads in their own right. And I do get a lot of amusement from the fact that Scratch is voiced by Dana Schneider, who was Gazpacho on Chowder, which was one of my favorite shows growing up. And he literally has the same voice as Gazpacho as well. So to see that here is pretty interesting, and kind of glad that Dana is back in the limelight per se. So there's that. There's also some other characters of note, particularly Daryl, Molly's little brother, who is voiced by Michaela Dietz, who is obviously from Steven Universe as well as Owl House. So to see her in this role as well is pretty interesting. And then we have Molly's friend Libby, who is voiced by Lara Jill Miller, who is Lisa on The Loud House. And she has a pretty similar voice to Lisa in a lot of ways, definitely a little less nasally, but you can definitely tell the resemblance there. And I will say up front that Libby's probably my favorite character of the show. I mean, I know a lot of people talk about Andrea, and we'll get into Andrea in a moment, but I feel like Libby is my personal favorite character, and I really like the friendship that she ends up forming with Molly over the course of the season, and just seeing their chemistry is very interesting to see. I know some people wouldn't be surprised if it ends up becoming a bit more than that, but we'll have to see. And then we get to Andrea, who is a fan favorite at this point. I mean, she's definitely more in line with the Diamond Tiara Pacifica Northwest archetype of this rich, spoiled girl who has a soft side to her. But what I do find interesting about Andrea is that yes, she does embody a lot of those spoiled rich girl tropes. And early on, she doesn't have the best showing where she literally outcasts Molly for mispronouncing her name. However, it's also made pretty clear in some other episodes that while she never exactly drops her persona per se, she is someone who isn't entirely selfish per se. I mean, one of the biggest examples that comes to my mind is in the Lucky Penny when she gets all this good luck and Libby has to convince her to hand over the penny that is infused with good luck. And she tries doing this by saying that she's collecting money for a charity to help kids that have too many toys. And Libby is just completely on board with this, saying that she relates to the struggle of kids having too much toys and not having any room to put them. I mean, yes, that really shows how short-sighted she is and how privileged she is. However, it also indicates that she very much has a good head on her shoulders and a good spirit at the end of the day. Other episodes include Home is Where the Haunt Is, where obviously she sees Molly being homeless and she ultimately puts together the movement to raise enough money to buy their house back. And she even says afterwards that she considers Molly her friend. So again, Andrea at the end of the day is a good character and is in line with the Diamond Tiaras and the Pacifica Northwests. However, she doesn't quite have the redemption arc aspect to it. It just seems like she already is a somewhat good character with a good heart at the end of the day. It's just that her perception is too often warped by her need for social media following and like her just being completely engulfed in her own lifestyle. But she does see herself as a good person. She does care about people already. She doesn't need to go through this redemption arc in order to do that per se. It's just that she can often get caught up in her own, I guess, shortcomings to really see the big picture. So that is an aspect I find pretty interesting about Andrea. And then the other element of the show I wanted to talk a bit about is the songs. Now, obviously, one of the main features of the show is that every episode of the show has a song in it, sort of like Phineas and Ferb. And for the most part, I do like these songs, and I'll probably make a separate video ranking each of the songs from season one. So I guess stay tuned for that. But for the most part, the songs are pretty good, and they really highlight a lot of the show's tone and its lighthearted tone through its lyrics. Like there are plenty of like lyrics where it sort of seems to be breaking the fourth wall to a degree, but also really getting entrenched in some of the visuals as well. So that aspect I do find interesting. Now, admittedly, I don't like all the songs, largely because they don't fit my musical style, and I will address that when I ever do get around to making song rankings, not just for this show, but also for other shows. So I guess that's something at least, but there are enough good songs there. I do like it as an aspect of the show, and I'm very curious to see where they take it from here on in. So I feel like that is a pretty positive element to the show. So in general, it is a show that I do like, and I feel like season one was pretty strong for the most part. Now, as I alluded to a moment ago, I do want to make additional videos about Molly McGee. I do want to make an episode ranking now that season 1 is done. I feel like now, during this hiatus, is probably a good time to put that video together. So stay tuned for that video. And along with that, I also want to make a song ranking of all the songs from season 1. So that is another video you can expect moving forward. But really, I just wanted to take this space to introduce like the show to the channel per se, like introduce it as one of the shows that I'm interested in and a show that I want to cover moving forward. And I figured that I was going to talk about my general thoughts here anyway, so I might as well make it its own video. And I know that this video was pretty informal for the most part, and I just sort of went from point to point. However, I figured this was the best way of going about it, as I didn't really want to put together a script. I figured that it was probably better for me to just speak what's on my mind. I figure I tend to sound better that way anyway. But anyway, I'm just going on and on. So anyway, that is today's video. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out with the channel. As I said, I am planning to make follow-up videos to Molly McGee, so stay tuned for that. I am also planning some future total drama content. I'm taking a little bit of a break from it for now, especially now that, again, I made this enormous player ranking a couple weeks ago. I definitely wanted to take some time to cool down from total drama before I go really back into it. Maybe talk about some other aspects of it, so stay tuned for that as well. And of course, MLP, that season episode ranking series is still well underway, so you can expect that to come out moving forward. Stay tuned for all that. And plus, if you haven't already, please join the Discord server. I'll leave a link to join the description. It's a good place to be. But for now, that is the video. See ya.